Good morning. Happy New Year. 2026, year of the fire horse. Oh my, here we are. So briefly, I've rearranged my furniture. I'm at a new angle, and I was out here thinking about some things. You still can't see them terribly well, can you? We'll work it out. But I want to walk you through here what I'm thinking about while I'm thinking about it. And today my toy is a TheraBand brand flex bar. So it's flexy. You can twist it, wring it out, and I can toss it around, and I can feel the impact of it, and I can get oriented. This is my left hand. I can get oriented to what's going on in that left hand. It's just really satisfying in that way. So it's my toy of the day. Okay, so when I turned on the video just now, it has me put in a title before I actually start recording, because this is just a live shot. And the title that came to me immediately was A Convergence of Wounds, which I thought was really lovely. And activated my poet self. Yes, Convergence of Wounds is what I want to talk about today. This is an image. It is not my image. This came from divergentfutures.com. But it is an image that I keep up in my office space here that illustrates the symptomatic overlap of ADHD, autism, and trauma. Big T, little t, trauma. Because these are working in our area of physiological response. How does our body actually show up in the presence of certain stimuli? And there's a lot of sensitivity in this image, and there's a lot of sensory processing capacity that is called into question in this image. How much of that stimulus can you really take before it becomes a problem? Whatever kind of problem. And here in the center, where everything overlaps, according to this image by Anna Clark, psychologist, the area of overlap here is burnout, overwhelm, anxiety disorder, executive functioning problems, emotional dysregulation. And those are the kinds of things that give us pain syndromes that can accumulate into autoimmunity, can accumulate into problems with our relationships, with our abilities, capacities to self-soothe, and to show up like the person that we want to be in our own life. That's what executive functioning is about, is to show up the way we intend in our life, whatever that means for you. Whatever that means for you. But that's what is called into question when you've got this accumulation, this convergence of wounds, where we're talking about trauma, we're talking about neurodiversity, we're talking about highly sensitive bodies and nervous systems that have not been calibrated to successfully operate in the environment that they're in. And what we know in biology is that organisms have specific needs that we can't really argue with. I can't keep a fish out of water just because I like it better that way. The fish won't function out of water for very long. And that will inevitably lead to the demise of the fish. And we are biological organisms that also have these kinds of physiological needs that we can't argue with, even if they're inconvenient or embarrassing or whatever. So when we feel like our ability to meet our own needs is being threatened by something in the environment, that's scary, that's uncomfortable. That probably is going to make us want to fight with something or run away from what we think the threat may be. And this is all happening at various levels of consciousness that you may or may not be aware of. This is all of us. This is all of us doing this all of the time, that we go towards what we like, what tastes good, what feels good, what we think is going to help us survive. And we're going to move away from anything that we feel threatens our survival at whatever level. And that's what we're doing all of the time. So when we're talking about PTSD, for example, we talk about triggers. We talk about this physiological event that gets activated in the body and sends us into an escalating experience of sensitivity and memory and emotion, because the body holds memory and emotion is chemical first. The body just throws this chemistry up into our awareness, and then we're like, oh, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm whatever. And we put language to it. But it starts as this bottom-up experience first. So the solution I'm offering is to understand how the mechanism works. Because if we're trying to work top down and squash it, we're just fighting with something that's not going to go away. And it's just going to keep coming, and it's going to keep coming, and it's going to come stronger and louder and more painfully until it gets acknowledged by the consciousness. And if we, depending on how we hold that, it's going to end up in our tissues and our muscles and our fascia and our nervous system and in the stories that we tell about ourselves, to ourselves. The narratives that we attach to in order to make sense of our environment, because that's what humans do. We tell stories. We tell stories to ourselves, we tell stories to each other, we tell stories that attempt to explain why this is the way that it is and why it feels the way that it feels to be in a human body on this planet. So there's a trigger. It activates a system. It initiates a wave of energy up from the body. At some point, we feel the impact of that event. And that's going to feel different for everyone in terms of how that actually impacts you. For some people, it's really gradual. For some people, it's all at once. For some people, it's so subtle that you've gotten used to ignoring it. Some people don't have the option to ignore it because it's so loud. But the mechanism works the same way. So what we do here is we observe the impact so that we can get information about it, so that we can learn what we need to learn from it. The body is offering this communication, and it is just asking to be heard and seen and witnessed and respected. So that's why we observe. And we observe with compassion and courage and curiosity as often as we can. And I have written here titration, because when you do this work on purpose, you're in control of the level of intensity. You choose your level of intensity in this process. So how big of a wave does it take to impact you consciously? How big of a wave do you need in order to impact you consciously? And we titrate that in practice so that we get skilled at deciding how much of a wave is going to come through. And we practice bigger and bigger and bigger waves for fun, like surfing, like exercise, for fun, for strength, for conditioning, for the capacity to show up in your life the way that you want to show up in your life. That's why we do it. And yes, it's good for you. It's good for your physical body to mobilize that energy. It has to. That's what energy does. Energy moves. Otherwise, it's in this constricted state, which requires a lot of energy to maintain, to hold that in, to hold that down. That will strain the container. It will strain the mechanism over time, which again is why we see things like autoimmunity and chronic complex pain syndromes and these kinds of physiologically based mood disorders that are very debilitating, because it's all coming out of that same like convergence. And this is how we start to, instead of going down that vortex, we're going to start sailing back up again. We got to get in with the right current. And so we learn how to ride these waves a little more skillfully. Over here, as the wave starts to come down, because what goes up will come down, always has, always will. That's the rules. So on the other side of this wave, we have integration. And that's where we have a chance to really metabolize everything that got stirred up. We have to digest it. We have to process it. We have to break it down into its smallest components, absorb anything that's useful and release anything that's not, just like we do for our food. That's what integration means. And I underlined titration and I underlined integration in red because I think that most people don't have any trouble getting themselves activated, but the challenge and the skill that I'm talking about comes in those two pieces. The skill of choosing the wave and the skill of digesting the experience that isn't always controllable, because we're still living in an environment that is open, shall we say, to the elements. So titration and integration are things that we all can use a little help with sometimes. Do you see yourself here? Divergentfutures.com. Like I said, it's not mine. I would add some things to it, I think. I think that there's more than 3 items on that Venn diagram. And I'm going to talk more about that later once I've had a chance to write some things down. But right now, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about for 2026. It's exercise. It's exercise. So what questions do you have about it? See you soon.